Morning everyone, I am Jeff Lawton. I'm going to look at another game from Carlsen versus Firouzja marathon bullet match. At the time of this game, 17, Firouzja was leading by 2 points, 9 points to 7. And we've got Carlsen playing white. World rank 1, world champion of course, Magnus, and Alireza Firouzja, 16 years old. In classical chess, he's 21st in the world. So Carlsen opened with e4. We had d6, which Firouzja played a lot as black, the Turk defense, played it a lot in the match. d4, knight f6, knight to c3, and now g6. Knight f3, bishop g7, and now bishop to e2, the classical variation. We had castles for both sides, and now a6, which is an unusual move. Instead of developing the knight or the bishop or playing c6 with the pawn, we had a4 to sort of inhibit the queenside expansion, knight to c6, and now rook e1. And now e5, staking a claim in the center. So Carlsen closed the position with d5, knight e7. So the move d5 marks the territory down for both sides. White is going to attack on the queen's side over here, and black on the king's side. And it looks a little bit more like a King's Indian really than a Perk opening, except for the pawn being back here. Because normally in a King's Indian the pawn would be here. So, but it's still similar. So we had a5, h6, knight to d2, and now knight e8, freeing the f pawn to advance. So we had knight c4 from Carlsen, and now f5. So it's becoming, the queen's side attack against the king's side. So it's an exciting way to play chess for both sides. And now f3, protecting e4 better. We had f4. So this is what black does. He's basically going all in on the king's side, hoping to play the g pawn forward, and maybe even go all the way down to g3 with that pawn. So Carlsen played b4 instead of trying to slow white down a bit, which he could have considered. Firouzja, he allowed b5 and just carried on with g5, and we had b5. And now knight g6. So now we've had 15 moves, and the players are down to about 50 seconds each. And we had b6, which is a strong undermining move. It sort of attacks the base of black's long pawn chain here. So we had rook to f7, which is both to try and defend over here, and also the rook may come here later. But generally it's an attacking move. Bishop to a3, bishop f8. So again, that's both defensive because it protects this, and also attacking because it frees g7 for the rook, multi-purpose move. And now b takes c7, queen c7, and now knight b6. So white has not only gained this fantastic square for the knight out on b6, but also it means that white can eliminate the bishop because it doesn't have anywhere to move to where it can't be captured. And it's very important. This bishop is probably black's key piece in the King's Indian, which black uses, and if it's eliminated, it really reduces black's attacking chances on the king's side. So we had rook to b8, queen d2, protecting the knight on c3, and we had knight f6. So black has no choice but to attack. That's the whole idea of this type of opening anyway. When you play it, you're going to have to attack as black. So we had knight c to a4, and now g4, opening up the king's side. So we had c4, because this gives white the idea of playing c5 and then breaking open the queen's side. and we had g3. So black is doing his best to attack on the king side, and now we had h3, and we had knight h7, to which Carlsen eliminated the dangerous bishop. It was possible, and in fact very dangerous, if black had played this, sacrificing straight away, because it's just a bullet game, and you probably wouldn't play this without being able to calculate it, perhaps. I'll just give an idea of what could happen anyway, just to show you how it turns out it is a good move. But just show you some lines to show you how black can attack once the attack gets going. So we have takes, knight h4, and well, white can't play here to perhaps intend this, because of course there's a knight check, forking the king and queen at the moment. So white would have to play a bit slower to try and guard the king side. Queen here first. Now the bishop's free to come here. But then after, say, rook g7, the problem is now that bishop f1 runs into g2, and you just lost time with the bishop then. And black wants to play g2 anyway. So white has no choice. There's no real way to defend the king side. The pieces that really want to defend it, the minor pieces, are all over here, 3 of them anyway. So after c5, black can surprisingly just take his time with knight h7. C takes d6, opening the queen side, but then queen d8, and now the queen is coming nearer to the action on the king side. And there's very little white can do here. For example, d7, knight g5, rook c1, and now g2. And now we're threatening to play knight check and bring the queen in with decisive effect. So after king h2, we can take this, and now we're threatening queen here to here mate. And white's difficulty is that he's got nothing to protect the g3 square with. There's no sort of easy way to sort of bring something back to protect that. So say you play king h3, we can play rook g3 check, king h2. And now you can finish white off with knight takes f3, bishop takes, pawn promotes, which blocks white's escape square now with his own rook, and then queen h4 is checkmate. It's by no means forced the line, but it shows you how dangerous it is in general for white, this sort of setup, especially in blitz, which is probably why Firouzja's playing this type of thing with black. It's clearly very dangerous in short time formats. And we had knight h7 instead. Now Carlsen played the strong move, eliminating the bishop, knight c8. We had queen takes c8, and now knight b6, queen to d8. We had c5, opening up the queen side, a strong move. So if here, white will carry on with d6, which threatens bishop to c4. And if black doesn't take that, then the pawn will become very strong. And once the queen side opens up, generally white will do well. So Firouzja played knight g5. Now the players have around 40 seconds. I mean, it's incredible. This sort of format of chess, they've made 27 moves and they've only used about 20 seconds each. It's less than a second per move. So we had c6, and now knight h4. Firouzja's got no choice because he's really getting run over on the queen side. And now rook e to c1, rook c7, and now rook to c2. So Carlsen's playing this very well. He's building up on the queen side and intends to open up the queen side, and when it's safe to do so, this pawn can be captured and then push the a pawn through to basically win the game. So we had queen e7 from Firouzja, bringing his queen closer to the king side. We had rook 1 to c1, doubling up, queen to g7. And now c takes b7, opening up the queen side. Rook b takes b7, rook takes c7, rook takes c7, and now rook c6. If Carlsen had a normal time control here, he probably would just take that off, and after queen takes, queen c1, because black can't really play this because the endgame's completely hopeless, because a6 will fall and then the pawn will queen. And if you play something like queen g7 instead, and white can play queen c8, and now this is extremely good for white because the queen now protects h3, and you know, everything's just wonderful for white here. For example, if you play king h7, we can play queen d7 because a queen exchange will give white a winning position. H5, and we can play queen g7, king g7, and just to show you the endgame, we can play knight d7, threatening to take on f8 and then d6 with the bishop. And after bishop e7, we could play knight b8, bishop d8, bishop b4, and after whatever black does, we can just capture this, and black can't do a single thing to stop the pawn queening. So instead of that, though, Carlsen played rook c6, and they're now down to about 25 seconds each. So Firouzja kept the rooks on with rook f7, and now queen c2, which allowed Firouzja a winning sacrifice, which he was very alert and spotted. But something like queen d1 would be a safer move when white should still be doing well. Because say black does the sacrifice as in the game, knight h3, gh3, g2, intending this, which is what happened in the game, here and then here. The difficulty is here that his queen e1 now covers the g3 square, and so this would go nowhere for white. But in the game, we had queen c2, and now Firouzja spotted his opportunity. Very tactically alert player, played knight h3 check. We had gh3, and there's no real choice because if you play king f1, black doesn't have to retreat the knight, he can just carry on with queen g6. And after, for example, knight c8, we can play just sacrifice again with knight g2. The knight's ready to come here, and then push the g pawn through. And if, for example, we play king g2, we can then play queen h5. And now there's an unstoppable threat of knight to f2, followed by queen h3 or queen h1 check. And if you play, for example, bishop a6, knight f2, king f1, trying to run away because there's no choice. If you play queen here, stopping checkmate on h1, black can play here first, of course, and then queen h1 checkmate. So after bishop a6, knight f2, king f1, trying to run away, then we can play queen h1 check, king e2, and now g2, followed by getting a new queen, and this is completely winning for black. There isn't anything white can do over here. So refusing the sacrifice wouldn't have helped white. So we had g takes h3, and now g2, and now the queen is coming here no matter what happens, because white's got no move to protect the g3 square. There's no piece that can protect the g3 square. So we had rook c8, and then queen g3, and bishop d6. So Carlsen is now down to 9 seconds, Firouzja is still on 22. And we had queen h3, and in this position, Magnus resigned because, for example, well, black is just threatening to go queen check, queen check, king f2, and then get a new queen. And if you play queen c1 to guard the g1 square in that line, then black can play queen h1 check, king f2, and now the sort of very elegant queen to h2. And the point is that we're now threatening to play. We're now threatening to go here, getting a new queen, and it's discovered check, so it's double check. So the only move white could really try to stop this would be queen g1. Otherwise, black gets a queen, is what I'm saying. But unfortunately, it allows queen g3 checkmate. So that's why Magnus resigned. So that game, it was actually quite key in a way, because it meant that instead of if Carlsen had won the game and he was in a winning position, then they would have narrowed the gap back down to a point. And who knows? I mean, it was a 194 game match, but it might have changed things a bit. Because as it was, he went 3 points behind, and he never again managed to get back level or lead in the match. So I hope you enjoyed that. It was even though it's 1 minute chess, when these players at this level play 1 minute, it's very entertaining, and also it's highly instructive. So thank you for watching. If you're enjoying these games I'm showing, please like the video and subscribe. Thank you. Bye now.